Targaryen incest. Isn't that what we all come to Game of Thrones
Yay!
and House of the Dragon for? This is Game of Thrones now with even more incest.
Wasn't expecting it to be as goddamn. Am I really gonna call this Tinder? I guess I'm gonna call it Tinder. Tinder lusting.
Tinder incest.
Yeah. So that was a delightful surprise.
Welcome, everyone. This is Vassals of Kingsgrave. We are the WolfCast. We are a podcast that is a spin-off of the podcast of Ice and Fire. We're devoted to all things nerdy, particularly the world of George R.R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones, and now House of the Dragon. We are here to discuss today the latest episode of House of the Dragon, episode 7, called Driftmark. Who's here with us? Let's start with Bina.
Hey everybody, it's Bina007 on the Vassals of Kingsgrave Discord server.
Michael.
Hey, Khal Wadege on the server.
Elle.
Hey, Elle, Nettles on the server.
And Jock.
Jock man though on the internet.
And then Patrick.
Greetings, Sai, Patrick, the troll.
And I'm David, also David HHH on the forum. Let's have a little introduction. For those who don't know, we are a podcast collective. There's a couple of dozen of us, and it changes from week to week and episode to episode, depending on what we feel like talking about and who feels like talking about it. There are so many of us who like to talk about the Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon shows that we've split up into groups so we don't have 20 people talking over each other. So we are the WolfCast, which is generally based on the European zone for timing purposes of getting everyone together, although a few of us tonight are Americans joining. One thing I wanted to do is reintroduce ourselves. So I wanted to have a few people tell us about yourselves, how you heard about Vassals of Kingsgrave, when you joined, and who's your favorite character in George's Song of Ice and Fire world. Let's start with Michael.
Yeah, so I was listening to the Mother podcast, which is a podcast of Ice and Fire, which then spawned Vassals of Kingsgrave. And pretty soon after it started generating podcasts, I started listening. And then after a couple of years of sitting on my hands, I decided I would also join in, I think in about 2014, 2015. Who's my favorite character? From this particular story, I'm going to say Rhaenys, the Queen Who Never Was, which is in particular helped by Eve Best's very good acting.
Okay. How about you, Jock?
I discovered Rock thanks to an essay Duncan did, which Ben said that he was a curator at Vassals of Kingsgrave, and I was like, what's that? So I clicked the link, and then just started listening to your podcast.
Jock, who's your favorite character? I'm sorry. I'll edit that out.
In this show, I really like actor Lara Strong's performance. Like, it's so, like, mustache twirling villain that I'm really enjoying it.
Cool. And then Elle, sorry.
Yeah, I would say maybe around 2014 I found the podcast in Ice and Fire, and I lurked for years and read, never really fully participated, just mostly as a spectator. I found the world itself back in 2011 when the show started, then just kind of like dove in the books. And I kind of listened to Vok and lurked some more until I finally said, got some balls and said, hey, maybe I could just kind of do that too. And everyone sounds fun. Mm-hmm. My favorite character is also Rhaenys, the Queen Who Never Was. Really, really love her a lot. Other than that, it would probably also be Damon as well. Not so much as I find him very intriguing. I don't want to say love Damon for who he is, but just I just find him super fascinating, even with all his toxicity. I find him very fascinating, and that's about it.
So I guess I'll end that. So I'm David, and first discovered this world through the first season of Game of Thrones. I had not read the books, although after the first season I jumped in and started reading them. And then I started listening to the Mothercast, again, like several people here. And then through that found the Vassals of Kingsgrave, listening to the show episodes and the great reread that we did, that I later ended up joining in on. So I listened and lurked for a while, listened in on the forums and commented a little here and there. And then when the seventh season of the show, I think it was, when it was starting, it just so happened that Duncan was posting that the Kraken cast schedule was going to work out perfectly for me because I'm a waiter and I sleep weird hours. So it was early in the morning here, so that was great. And I'm like, I just happened to be looking, and I had actually just bought a microphone and headset and was like, it's destiny. So I jumped in, and that was about 5 years ago now, a little over 5 years ago. And I've been here ever since. So,
So,
Yeah.
so David, so we actually missed each other on the Game of Thrones podcast
Mhm.
bit, because I get off after season
Right.
5. So this is the first time we've done like a
Mm-hmm.
WolfCast. Like this season is the first time we've done a WolfCast
Yep.
together, or any of those casts.
I was a
Interesting.
Kraken. So, but yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but
But I listened to you so much. Before we even talked, I felt like I knew you. That's, that whole parasocial relationships thing, with the internet.
yeah, we're definitely friends.
Just for those who are interested, if you like us and you like the fun we have with it, we are very open to new people and new ideas, and you're welcome to join us on our Discord server. The links will be in everywhere you'll find this podcast. You should be able to find it posted. You can join us, and if you think you want to talk nerdy with us, then ask if you want to join in, and we can do it. So maybe we'll talk to you soon. One other thing, I should give spoiler warnings here. We will be very likely spoiling many things from the world of George R.R. Martin, from any of the books, from the Game of Thrones show up through, I believe, season 5, basically where it diverges, where it goes past the books. We will not spoil the last 3 seasons of Game of Thrones. We will probably likely at some point spoil some future events from this show because, well, we've all read the books, so that might very well come up in the conversation, just so you're warned now. Okay, well, let's go with what we usually do, lemon cake ratings, unless someone has a better idea. Stabbed eyes ratings? I don't know.
I think lemon cakes are more
Yeah,
palatable.
probably a little tastier too. How about you start, Patrick?
I switched, like I went up and down lemon cake rating through
Mhm.
the episode, and it was really a big ride for me.
Mhm.
This one, I will have to deduct at least a half a point just because I couldn't see half of the
Mhm.
episode because of the bad filtering of light they put on the camera or post editing.
Mhm.
I think actually that I was interested in most of the episode must be an asset to it. So I think I would probably go like a 3.5 because there's definitely stuff that I think was not necessary at all. It's different, yes, but this was not necessary. But there was also very good bits of it that I liked.
Cool.
So 3.5.
Okay. Jock, how about you?
I think I'll give it a 4 out of 5. The actors are just so brilliant. Like, it's amazing, like how HBO is able to get kid actors who can actually act and not just sort of like how kid actors normally are, which is sort of like really awkward. Like the kid actors are just incredible in both this and Game of Thrones. So I was really impressed by it.
Elle?
I'm really having a hard time rating these
Mhm.
episodes. I don't even recall having such a hard time with Game of Thrones, but I am struggling with ratings, which isn't necessarily a bad problem. I think that just, again, this was such a crazy ride, and I'll almost always feel that way. And I just cannot like nail down critically like why I wouldn't given it the rating that I'm giving it, other than I really enjoy everything. So With that being said, I'm gonna try and I'm gonna say a 4.25 lemon cakes. It was great. I don't want to say perfect, but it was fantastic. I loved it. Just two things really that kind of stuck out for me. The minor thing was it was very, very dark. So kind of had that problem, like at the Battle of Winterfell. So that was kind of an issue for me. But what really kind of got my craw was kind of how they handled Lenore and my issues with that, which we can, if we talk about
We
that later
definitely
on,
will.
I will go in more depth too. Yeah. So that was like the bigger thing, but the kids were fantastic. The funeral, I loved. I mean, it was so amazing. The uncomfortableness of it was awesome. I loved every minute of that. And I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, 4.25.
How about you, Michael?
I really like this episode, and I'm tempted to say this was my favorite episode of the
Woohoo.
season, so I gotta give it something
Mhm.
high, I suppose. Let's go with 4.5.
Mhm.
I do have to deduct, some points like everyone else for that really not great day for night that they showed, but hey, I guess they did what they did. But all the characters were just really strong in this episode, were interacting in interesting ways, so yeah, I really liked it.
Cool. And Bina?
Yeah, all the lemon cakes. The previous favorite episode that I had was the one where they have all the really gnarly, interesting relationship stuff, particularly between Rhaenyra and a young Damon, which I thought was incredibly nuanced as episodes go. This episode, I think, surpasses it for writing, for moving forward plot and character. I thought it was just beautifully acted, directed, and written. I get that people are complaining about the darkness. I watched it weirdly. This is the first episode I watched on my phone, not on my TV. And maybe my phone's settings are different, but it wasn't too dark for me. So no need to deduct anything, and all the fracking lemon cakes in the world. My favorite episode. This show just feels like it's on a different. I mean, I love Rings of Power too in different ways. This feels like it's just operating on so much more of a sophisticated level in terms of the writing, and I'm really here for that.
Bina, everything you said, I really agree with. And that's kind of where I feel like my lemon cakes are kind of like all over the place. And I felt the exact same way about the episode too. They just kind of top one other after the other. And I'm like, I'm not going to give it all the lemon cakes every damn weekend. You can't do that.
Yeah, you can.
Well, we'll get into it because I think there's still things we can criticize about this episode, not just the darkness.
Yeah, but in general, I think if you like something, you can give it all the lemon
Right?
cakes all the
Right.
time.
If
I
it's
mean,
good, it's good.
in fact, there are seasons of The Wire and seasons of The Sopranos and seasons of Deadwood where I would give every episode 6 out of 5,
Mhm.
and that's what makes for all-time great
Yep.
TV. And I think, I mean, I don't want to overhype this, but to me, this feels like it's shaping up to be something quite
Cool.
special, and I'm incredibly excited about it.
Same.
Well, I would say I go differently into it. I would say I recognize that, Avatar: The Last Airbender, while being one of my all-time favorite shows in general, I do recognize that some of the episodes are not great. Like, if anyone knows about Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Great Divide, definitely not a great episode. So I would say that you still need to recognize that some of the episodes are less good than others if they have things that could be criticized. And I think this does. But yes, we'll get into it.
Yeah, I don't think we're disagreeing, Patrick. I mean, if I thought there was shit to criticize, I would.
That's
So
what
I'm
we
not saying
do.
that you
That's what we
shouldn't.
do.
You should deliberately withhold. I'm just saying that I have nothing to criticize. So I'm curious to see what you'll object to, because it's not something I initially picked up
And
on.
for me, even if I give something a 5, that doesn't mean I'm not going to criticize it. So, you can always find nitpicks. I mean, I don't think anyone thinks that a 5 is like the absolute most perfect thing ever, but I'm not going to start giving things a 4.97. Yeah. In fact, I'm going to give this one a 5. It was full on fun. It was powerful. It had surprises, even for us book readers. It was well done. It was a little dark at points for me too, as was the episode before. But other than that, there's some little nitpicks here and there, but not much. I came out of this episode surprised, happy, enjoying it, excited. I came out like that was great television. So I'm giving it a full-on 5.
Certainly a 5 for me emotionally.
Well, there you go. And that's most important, right? It gets you in the feels. Okay, well, let's maybe go through the episode then. So let's start with a nice Driftmark Funeral. First thing I noticed that I liked was the mention of the Merling King. That was kind of cool. But let's kind of link all these scenes together here. The actual funeral and maybe the Corliss offering the seat of Driftmark to Lucerys and that whole little section there. So anyone have any thoughts on this or anything that stood out you want to talk about before we get to the action of the episode?
It was fun to see a funeral scene that had all these different elements taken into it. There was Valyrian, you had some of the Tully funeral rites, the Merling King. You could tell that the writers were having a bit of fun just playing with some of these world-building details that we haven't seen, which all kind of fits because we know that the Valyrians in general were not particularly godly,
Right.
so I'm not surprised at all to learn that the Valerians have sort of made up their own sort of culty religion, whatever.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, this was definitely a scene of more just setting the scenes. We get lots of good little character moments of, different characters interacting and or standing on the sidelines or whatever. But I liked it for that. Definitely for such a big episode with so many things happening, it was kind of nice to have a little moment of peace and quiet at the beginning.
I love how it felt more like it was a bunch of storylines within a storyline. Everyone's kind of having their little side pieces of action kind of going on at this like very somber, sad, but yet really uncomfortable funeral. So I can definitely tell too that they were having a lot of fun with that. It was quiet, it was somber, there was a shit ton of activity and action still going on, and I thought that was great.
It was interesting to see the funeral speech eulogy maker guy, who I'm pretty sure was Vagon, the brother of Corliss Valerion, dropping a few passive-aggressive digs in Valerion against some of the family members present. And it made me wonder, this character, we've seen pop up a few times, if he has something in store for him that involves his tongue at the end of this season.
How did they transport her to Driftmark this fast? And or at least, there's something with the timing. I'm not quite sure about how that worked because they were in Pentos, and I'm pretty sure both kids didn't ride on a dragon to Driftmark.
We don't know how much time happened between episodes either, so I mean, it takes a while to get a funeral together, but
it does. I'm just saying it's a bit weird timey-wimey with the time unless she did fully like start the decomposing.
Point was she was singed to death and they had wooden effigy in place. There was no body transport. It was just a carved wooden person.
Don't have to worry about the mold or fungus.
It wasn't Queen Elizabeth II being transported from Scotland to England. I mean, I think she was singed to a crisp.
They might have brought her ashes.
Didn't they show her burned corpse?
No, it was just a wooden mannequin, wasn't it?
What? No, last week I felt like they showed her charred skeleton. No.
Good, and then when I blow on it, it just appears into ash. I don't think that made it to Driftmark.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, that was one of the things I thought was a bit weird because I didn't understand how they did that. But yeah, of course, if she was completely gone, which I did not pick up on, I thought she was just burnt until she died, and then was taken, and the rest of the body would have been nasty. So that's a bit, if it's true that she was completely gone, then it's fine. But I don't think they specifically said that or showed that.
Yeah, I mean, this is getting nitpicky to the point where I'm like, why would anyone listen to us? But I mean, if you're a dragon, do you think a dragon is going to breathe fire on someone to the point where they're crispy but not quite disintegrated and magically stop?
Yes, that's yes, actually, because they will want to eat it. They don't eat ashes; they eat a crispy body.
Well, I hope he wouldn't be eating his
I'm
owner.
so bored by this conversation. I think this is ridiculous, and I
Okay.
don't care.
No. I'm just saying that if it is, then it's just a bit weird. And it was the first thing that just popped into my head was, how the hell? But then, so that's sort of took me out of the immersion of the whole bit of the funeral bit, which also I thought was a bit, when you see acting, sometimes acting is so much that the whole, I don't know, with they sort of linger on the like almost but not full engagement in acting between. So like if you use too much effort in showing that you're not you don't really, you can't really go over and talk to a person, it becomes almost labor the way you want to show them that I want to talk to him, but I really just can't. And that was and I thought it was just, I didn't like the acting very much from a few of the adults. I mean, the kids, as you say, are very good, especially for their age. So I'm just saying that with that first thing that took me a bit out of it, I thought that I wasn't actually enjoying that scene with the funeral at all, really.
So let's maybe talk about a couple of specific moments in here. What did you think about Corlys offering the seat of Driftmark to Lucerys, Luke? And his response to, if I'm the Lord of Driftmark, it means everyone's dead. Oh, that was sad.
Very profound from an 8-year-old, I assume. In grief. I thought it was, well, as some people have said when they first heard that I don't want it, there was sort of some PTSD, but then he phrased it very nicely, and I was like, oh, wow. What nice writing.
Mm-hmm. But also Corlys, doing that, given that, the rumors going around, is he trying to get ahead on the rumors and, let's just put him in and say he is. So we're gonna make it clear that we are backing these kids. I don't know, or was it just him? I don't know. I'm not sure what his motivation.
I assume that he's sort of mentally fighting it,
Yeah.
and then it takes Rhaenys, obviously, in the next scene to lay it out.
And even in that scene, he's like, "No, we're all in on these kids," which was cool.
I mean, he's not wrong. They are all in on these kids, and that they have to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's the political reality of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it have passed? Sorry, I'm asking again a nitpicky question, but that makes wouldn't the line have passed to Lena's kids? I think that's what I'm thinking, because the other ones are supposed to be inheriting the throne or connected to the throne, where the rest are connected to Driftmark.
Only one of
right?
the kids is going to inherit the throne, presumably. I mean, theoretically.
Yeah.
Unless you have a civil war in which they all
know.
die, but that's not going to happen.
I just thought that the line of succession would have meant that Damon and Lena's kids would have been like obvious choice to inherit, because they were not, because they were supposed to be. But if that's true, then it seems like Corlys is being, having a bit of a double standard, because he's very up in arms that Rhaenys was robbed from her right to rule, and and then he's sort of assuming that just is the man from the other bit of the house that's gonna rule Driftmark.
Well, in the show, Laenor is the
Right,
elder, and
exactly.
Lena is the
That's what I was
younger.
gonna
So
say.
by primogeniture, whatever, Lena's kids, who are Valyrian until they are made Targaryen, should they ascend the throne, they
Right.
become yada yada yada
Right.
Targaryens.
And one of them will ascend the throne, but the other one won't theoretically. So, and unless they do, in which case, then it would move on to the next. Makes sense. Okay.
Also, Martin's succession has always been quite simplified compared to like any sort of the old dynasties. Like even with like Tywin and Hoster not remarrying and stuff like that, and like 8,000 year long dynasties, like all of it
Mhm.
doesn't really make much
Mhm.
sense in a succession idea.
Fair point. Fair.
So really anything.
So the only other things I noticed in this scene that were interesting were one, both drunken Laenor and drunken Aegon II. Just both of them a little messy right now, and we're gonna see where that goes. And then also Viserys trying to make peace with Damon, and Damon not having it. That was a kind of interesting scene, for just a moment at least. Anything else?
Just a word. Yeah. Just a word on Aegon. I kind of appreciated how the show is kind of letting him lean into book Aegon as just like a drunken, kind of lascivious lout, is kind of how he's described in the book, his personality wise. And it's like the kid is the actor's kind of leaning into that than the writing. And I was kind of like, yeah, I definitely dig that. I thought that was really good of them to do.
Cool.
They've certainly done a good job giving all of these kid characters their own distinctive personality quirks, particularly like someone like Helena, who's really prophetic seer,
Yeah.
goth, weird, which is just nice. It's a nice distinguishing detail.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember her in the books, but I did not remember her being this Wednesday Addams as gothy
Right.
as the show is kind of making her with this Wednesday Addams vibe. I dig it, like, for sure, but her book personality was slightly different and in just more of a almost simple. I don't want to say simple minded, but kind of it seemed like they made her to be more simple in the book.
Yep. And what?
I would say that's also just a consequence of George not giving any lines or anything particular of interest to some of these characters, and they just come across as ciphers with nothing to do. Which is actually my greatest compliment to the show, is that they've taken these characters, which I was not particularly interested in, and just made them so much more dynamic in a way that feels true to the writing. So
yeah.
Enough of my compliments for these directors.
And on that note, I think one of my big criticisms last week was that we've just met these new kids and they're not very, we don't know who they are, and they're all going to become important. And they did a good job, I think, this week of differentiating them all. So that was nice to see. Okay, I think we've worked this scene, and we certainly have a lot more to talk about. So why don't we move on to some more Targaryen incest? Isn't that what we all come to Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon for? This is Game of Thrones now with even more incest.
Wasn't expecting it to be as God damn. Am I really gonna call this Tinder? I guess I'm gonna call it Tinder. Tinder love
Yes, tender
scene.
incest.
Yeah. So that was a delightful surprise.
It's still a little creepy.
I think they've just leaned into it, and they're just complete, and they say, what you get ready into. This is Targaryens. That's what they do. Like, also Aegon talking about his sister that way, like, very nonchalantly.
Right?
Come on. and Aemon's just saying, I would do my duty.
That was great.
And then
That was great.
yeah. So I think they're just like, come on, yes, this is a bit shocking, but come on, let's just try to make it so that we trying to show them that they actually want to do this, both of them. There's no consent issue in this one. Although he does sort of leave her at the end afterwards, but yeah, okay. Yeah.
So here's a question I have for you all. Clearly, this is at least partially a power move, right? I mean, clearly, especially by the end of this, in that one of the last scenes, we make it clear. But at this point in this scene, do you feel like this is just passion? Do you think that she loves him, and do you think that he loves her? Those may not be the same answer, but what do you think?
Definitely get the sense of a almost reverse dynamic now that these two characters of Rhaenyra and Damon are older. You sense that Rhaenyra is now the one who's actively trying to instigate this, and Damon, I couldn't quite read what was going on with Damon. Yeah. He also seemed to be attracted to Rhaenyra, but was a little more cool, a little more hesitant. I thought it was just, something interesting.
I think you're spot on there, Michael. I read in Damon that same hesitancy that stopped him from taking her virginity in the brothel. A kind of a revulsion that it's his niece, but at the same time a base attraction. With her, I think it's far more complicated. I think in one sense she is still attracted to him as she was in the brothel. But on the other hand, I think she's a much cooler political operator. I think she recognizes her children and her claim are at risk and that he can shore it up. So I think with her, it's both political power, maybe power over the man who once rejected her, but also at a base level, this is a man who sees me, understands me. I didn't have that in my husband. Right. I didn't have that in my lover. I have that, I had support and solidarity from my husband. I had lust with my lover, but here is a man who potentially understands me. So I think her sort of state of mind is far more complicated and fascinating, but she's clearly the instigator here, right? Which is a really interesting turn of affairs. For those of you, I read the book. I don't remember anything of it. Is that how it is in the book? Is she the instigator in the book?
It's all third party, so we just hear what happened. We don't really have the why or how, or I don't even think Mushroom even really speculates too much about what they really feel.
Not made aware if there's a reverse of roles that takes place later in their lives or anything like that.
Other than the rumors of what they supposedly had done, what Damon had done to her sexually, doesn't really make it clear. Fire and Blood doesn't make it that clear on what her actual feelings are. No.
Right. Well, that's one of the good things about having this show as opposed to, the history format of the books is that we're getting, and that's something we'll probably talk about a little later actually, is we're getting into people's heads a lot more. We're seeing them firsthand as opposed to, someone watching, a historian telling the story that he heard from someone else through someone else. And, and then of course in the history, we don't really know for sure what happened because not everyone was there at every point. We're getting a lot of those mysteries revealed here. And that's something we'll talk about later in this episode, in fact. But we are definitely getting certainly more characterization of these characters than we got in the book, which is nice, I think. And one of the things that I'm liking about this show. Anything else on the incest scene? The first incest scene. And I definitely think that it's less clear for me here if this is just passion or, if this is politically motivated, where I think the later scene after all the fights happen definitely seems much more politically motivated. So if this scene hadn't been there, I'd wonder if that wasn't just them making political moves, whereas here with this scene we see some passion. So
I don't know. Did anyone else feel like Matt's or Damon's acting was a bit muted in this episode? It was difficult to get any read on him in general. I think that Rhaenyra's acting, she's the one who's alive, and he's very much and it could make sense that he's actually mourning.
Right, I would say in this scene especially.
It could it makes sense that he's actually mourning, but it's very very little actual face mimicry or anything like in that in basically the whole episode from him. He's very one type face all through the episode. Or am I wrong?
Well,
As a character, he's certainly the most passive in this episode, and as other people have pointed out, this is the only episode where he hasn't done something wrong, and now he gets to observe other
Right.
people fucking up,
which he
is
really
amusing.
enjoys in the later scene we'll get to. He really enjoys watching everyone else fucking it up, but in any case.
I think the interpretation of him being in mourning and being, again, unsure of his place now that he's come back after supposedly 10 years or maybe a little less of exile and Pentos, and he doesn't quite understand what he's doing, what he's going to be doing in the future. He's just, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's got to be, if you think about it, it's a pretty complicated place to be. Your wife, who you didn't really care about that much, just died. And now his brother, who exiled him, is now trying to make peace, which he wasn't having. And now his niece, who he was flirting with before, is now hitting on him, and they're having sex. And what's going on? Like, that's a roller coaster of emotions, right? I don't know how I'd deal with that. Well, I wouldn't have sex with my with my niece, but that's another story.
Thought the relationship between Damon and Elena was interesting, that they seem to be attached to each other in some regard, perhaps a lot, but it wasn't particularly clear, whereas in the books I get the impression from these fragmented histories that Elena was the genuine love of his life, but they're obviously going for something different here, it would seem.
Yeah, in the books I get the impression that the Damon Reyna thing was political more than anything. Okay, so I think, are we done with incest for the moment until a little later when we're going to get more of it? Anything else of the scene you want to talk about?
Did the Aemons see them, or what? How did that?
I don't think so.
We kind of panned over to him, and then he was like storming away, and then he got the call from Vhagar.
It was a bait and
Did he see it?
switch. Like you're expecting that to happen. He stumbles into the ruins of the ship and goes, oh, but no, they're doing something else, I believe. No, I couldn't see anything because it was so damn dark.
Right. That was the darkest part of the episode. But that said, let's move on. Aemon getting his dragon. What a scene, right? Like, I hated this character before this moment, but you know, didn't your heart just soar with him? It was awesome.
No.
Oh, I did. Okay.
No.
What'd you think? Why not Elle?
I know
we know what he's going to become, but I'm just saying, just in this one scene.
Enjoyed Vhagar's character as she was seemingly judging Aemon and being like, should I burn you up? Should I let you climb up? I'm going to try and buck you off and have you fall to your death. I thought that was fun.
Also, there's a pattern rising with Vhagar, because first of all, his first rider, or at least the rider we know of, is Visenya, who's the second, a spirited second in command, so to say. Then we have Lena, who is also very spirited and also not the one to inherit, still there. And then now we have Aemon, who's also sort of the warrior, more so than his bigger brother, and he's accepted by Vhagar. So this is an interesting thing.
So maybe he likes the second in command who steps up where it's needed with his help.
Yeah. Maybe there's like a neural pattern that he needs to bind to.
Maybe. I just loved the whole scene, just the whole like, I mean, it really for me captured how scary and exciting and the complete roller coaster ride it would be to be riding a dragon, you know. I mean, it's scary at first. It's terrifying because this thing can kill you and it's, 1,000 times bigger than you. But then the flying itself was so thrilling and exhilarating, except when you're flying from it and going to fall to your death. You know, I really, really, like, I was actually in the first scene starting to fall asleep as I was watching, and then this scene happened and I was like totally awake and watching, like, oh my God, I love this. Possibly my favorite scene in the episode.
I mean, it was clear that it was Vhagar choosing Aemon and not the other way around. Right. So, I mean, that's kind of how the scene felt for me.
Well, I mean, I think Aemon would have chosen he would have taken any dragon he could get. But this one.
Did he know that was Vagar? I mean, obviously he had to because she's so large.
Yeah.
Some people I read online were like, was that a just random dragon? Did he know? And then saw Vagar and was like, oh shit, but it's too late to turn back.
I mean, I got the impression he went there with that intention. But
Yeah, I think this was on his mind for quite a while. Since his pride had been pricked in the previous episode, he was like, "I'll show you guys. Look at my
look at my
dragon, it's the
pig.
biggest in the world."
Look at my pig.
Well, at least it was like that in the books, because then Vagar was in the courtyard, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so he would have known exactly which dragon that was and where was. Well, Vagar here was just on the beach somewhere. So it's not as obvious here, but I think it's, if you just combine it with the book reading, then yeah, maybe he had a plan all along to show them up.
They've done a pretty good job with the art design to show that this is Vagar. This is the hoary, old, wrinkly, kind of saggy, manatee-like looking dragon.
With a dad bod, kind of. You know? Like
very
a
good
fat
at visually
dragon.
communicating these dragons.
It's a chunky
Some
dragon.
turkey gobble.
It's a chunky dragon. Come on. I love it.
And absolutely mammoth in proportion.
Right.
Just even looking at it, you know, in your head and you see it on pictures, but to actually see her profile and like that was damn good. Yeah.
Why don't we move on to the after effects as Aemond leaves the dragon, and then it's time for kid fight.
I cannot wait to hear what everybody thinks about this. I'm going to listen to everyone else.
Well, I mean, for my first thought is, damn, that was brutal. Like, a lot more brutal than I was expecting all of this to be. Like, for these kids to be getting into this, like, level of violence was pretty crazy.
I really enjoyed I just had the ultimate adrenaline rush experience that Eamon was showing off. He doesn't fear anyone. He doesn't fear these four kids going at him 4-on-1 style. And each of these characters, again, they've all got their own little thing where Rhaena, I believe, was really upset that she was expecting this to be her dragon, understandably, as a kid would. And then I would also say you just see the entitlement and the arrogance from these kids that, you know, raised as aristocrats. They just think they can do anything. So I'm not surprised that it escalates as it does to someone losing an eye.
Aemon, one eye.
He's obvious seeing them as actual adversaries, and it's likely that it's just like something he's been told by his brother or his mother, likely more his mother than his brother, because his brother doesn't care. But he's the one to instigate, you know, the level of violence that it ends with. They just wanted to yell at him, really, basically.
There's definitely that moment where Eamon's calling them, "You're gonna die in fire, just like your father." And it's like, oh my god, this went from a nice 2 to 9 to 10, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah. It just explodes so quickly.
My only problem trope of the sort of like I was bullied, so I'll take out on somebody else sort of thing. Like I don't really think that's helpful cultural connections you make with society more broadly, where if somebody gets bullied, then they all of a sudden become a psychopath afterwards. So, like, I don't think the pig-dragon association should have been made in that scene.
I do feel like we've been given hints throughout Eamon's brief characterization that there's something off with this kid. He's not just a little shit like Aegon is, and he's not super weird and reclusive the way Helena is. There's an infant terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a Damien kind of vibe I get from Aemon, for sure.
Right?
Yeah, and you can really see it in that scene where kind of the abused is now the abuser, and it's better to be the dragon and not the goat getting feasted upon and, you know, devoured. by everyone else, and just kind of that's what he's going to bank on, and that's what he's going to build on from here on out, as we already know.
Yep. I mean, I did like the idea of, though, like, listen, I'm a dragon rider now. Don't fuck with me, because I will fuck with you, because I've got a dragon. Like, that makes sense as a character arc. I liked it. I'm the bullied kid, and now I've got power, and don't fuck with me.
It doesn't make me, root for him.
No. Well, I never expected to root for him, so.
Yeah.
Especially after reading the books. You don't want to root for him, but yeah.
Yeah, you just kind of, like the bully thing. You got him back, and there you go. Now you can defend yourself, and you can fight for yourself. Now you've just become all that torment that others have done in you. You are like no different now.
Right.
Exactly. Well done.
Yep.
I mean, the way I interpret this scene is very much that the children are each respectively a reflection of what their mothers have chosen to put into their ear. So, I mean, I'm really curious, and I haven't really gone through the Discord today, but are there still Alicent defenders left? Because her children seem so bitter and twisted and entitled and horrid.
From her.
Whereas...
From her.
Yeah. Exactly. Whereas Rhaenyra's kids just seem like poor little dumb fucks who don't realize everyone's chatting about them, or probably do realize. And I feel that Alicent came across as so cynical. Not cynical's the wrong word, but manipulative and nasty. And she has created in these children vessels for her own poisonous attitudes and paranoia. And I kind of really felt sorry for them, actually. I thought, what chance did they have with parents like that?
You could argue that for all the kids, really, on all sides.
Yeah.
I also feel bad for Alicent's kids, but I found myself really feeling bad for Alicent in a way that I was not expecting in this episode. Like when she just completely freaks out. And we can get to it in the next scene, but... It's peak.
Yeah, but I'm fascinated to hear about it because I had so the opposite reaction. So I'm so excited to hear your reaction.
All right, great.
Well, we got a lot more Alicent coming up. So anything else specifically in terms of the kids fight? Here's a question. Do you think that any of them actually would have killed anyone? Like, do you think it was going to go too far? Like when one of the kids had the knife, do you think he was actually going to do it?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Kids are assholes.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, Aemon had that rock. He was ready.
Right, between the rock and the knife. Yeah.
Yes. Do y'all think that before we move on, the whole scene there and Rhaena's like, you took my mama's, that was my dragon, and with Aemon being like, nah, is it this was rightfully my dragon because it was my mother's, everyone knows that, or is it no, dragon, you gotta go claim a dragon, you wrestle a dragon, and you don't get one pass down.
It's a fair point.
Yeah.
It's whatever these kids think belongs to them, going, this is mine, no, this is mine. It's very much kid logic up for debate, I think.
Fair point. Although I think he did have a valid point. If he was your dragon, you should have fucking taken it. You didn't, so I did. I mean, it's not an unfair point, all that.
He was disrespectful, in my opinion.
I mean, he was.
Yeah, she was mourning. Was mourning still. That's the same in the books, really. So that's no difference.
Well, he is a dick.
He is.
He's a dick.
He's a dick. He's a dick by doing it as soon. If he had waited a little and then tried, it would have definitely gone over differently. But him going at the funeral and taking Vhagar is what was started basically the whole feud between the two sets of children.
Are we anything else about the actual fight before we go into the massive, I think even bigger scene afterwards that happens? The after effects?
I think there is an interesting sort of idea, like the various real life claims that adults make with like various property rights, where like one person asserts like they own their property because like they own like something on top of something. So like mineral rights. Like if they own like the land on top of it, they'll claim mineral rights. Or somebody else would claim ownership over like their labor. They put labor into it, or ownership over putting capital into it. And sometimes there's conflicts between those things. So I think like the kids both had fair points about the dragon. Like she could have claimed ownership over inheritance, and he could have claimed ownership over putting the work into getting the dragon tamed. So I think like both were in the light there.
And you could make a legal argument of what sort of sentience do the dragons display? Are they slaves? We hear a particular prominent character say that a dragon is not a slave. So I agree. There is a very interesting legal discussion over dragon property rights. But I do think this argument here was very much intended just as little kids getting into a fight over a sandcastle.
I mean, in the end, ultimately, the dragon's going to make the final decision because you can get on it. And as you saw him, if you saw her trying to maybe, no, I'm not going to let you, you know? I mean, it's not like you can actually mount her and ride her without her permission. In any case, let's move on to the even bigger scene, I think, which is the confrontation when the parents get involved. After the eye has been slashed, and Alicent explodes and maybe crosses a few lines she maybe shouldn't have. What do you think, guys? What did you think here? This was the best scene in the episode, I think. But
yeah, same for me. I just love that each of the characters, and there's so many in the room, were so strong. Like, Aegon is drunk, Rhaenyra and Damon come in because they've just been having sandy sex, and Damon is just like, I'm just gonna lean on this door and watch it all go down.
Right.
Alicent's getting crazy, Rhaenyra's getting defensive of her children, Rhaenys is coming to console her, granddaughters. I just really liked it.
everyone, yeah. The looks on everyone's faces was great.
I like one thing. The general I don't like when the way Alicent is portrayed in this scene, but I liked one thing. That's when Alicent actually stabs her arm, Rhaenyra's arm, and both Rhaenyra and Corlys looks up at it with the exact same expression of like incredulous, like what did you just do? Yeah, and Corlys just be like the second, like the other, friend or whatever, like what? And just next
And to be
it,
honest, Otto gives the same look too. Like, what did you just do?
yeah.
And on some level she does too, because she's like, what did I just do? You know?
I think it's calling back to all of the discussions about the dynamics, female dynamics between Rhaenyra and Alicent not having her whole phase. And it kind of coming out in that kind of way of the resentment of Rihanna, not Rihanna.
Rihanna, yes.
Rhaenyra, and how she's decided to live her life, and she's living the life that she wants, and Alicent is not and has not, and this is how it's manifesting, and it's coming back.
Yeah, excellent acting by Alicent's adult actor, whose name I'm forgetting. I love that just mental breakdown, and it made me feel, as I was saying, so bad for her, even though I can appreciate what she's doing is terrible, and the influence that she's having on her children is just corruptive, but I just sympathized in her for reasons I didn't really think I would, because in her perspective, your son has just had his eye cut out, and the judge, who happens to be your husband, has essentially ruled in favor of the opposite party, and then even said, no one's allowed to talk about this bastardry anymore. I feel like we've been talking about how Alicent feels like she's being gaslit by, she's the only one who's saying what she sees. And so she's just been completely deserved in this, and she just has a psychotic break. And then again, follows up in the next scene where she's expecting to be reprimanded by her father, and I think is even looking for some sort of moral guidance. And what she gets is the opposite. She gets like, "Well done, daughter. I enjoyed watching you go batshit crazy," and I just It's so bad for
Right.
Alicent.
What I think is so interesting about her is that her father has ingrained in her that Rhaenyra is going to come for your kids. And it just happened. I mean, one of the kids just took your kid's eye out. So, I mean, I get that it's not unreasonable for her to really freak out at that moment, you know? Like, your kid has just lost an eye from her kids. I mean, whether or not, you can argue the whole scene was messy and complicated, which obviously it was. But for Alicent, this is kind of confirmation of all those fears that Otto ingrained in her head. And this is the moment where she's like, my kids are in actual danger, and so is my whole family, and I need to fight back now and protect them. It seems like she's being aggressive and going over and being the attacker, but I mean, in her mind, she's backed into a corner and her family is backed into a corner and she needs to protect them. I mean, I know some people have said that they think that Alicent is being painted in very broad strokes and is a little like unrelatable and all, but I mean, I think in this scene, I mean, yeah, she definitely goes in even broader strokes. She goes a little crazy, but it's reasonable for her to do so. I mean, this is an awful situation, and admittedly, she snaps, and no one's defending her, I don't think, but it's understandable.
I think she would have snapped if it was just a bloody nose, personally, or a black eye.
Maybe.
I think it would have been the same outcome.
But I mean, an eye being taken is a big deal. If your child lost an eye, that's a huge thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. She
I'm-
probably would have, but this, I mean, that's something to legitimately snap over.
Yeah, but
I-
do you stop to ask yourself why your child was in a position where they lost their eye?
Exactly.
Or do you, pun unintended, blindly go into battle for them on their side? I mean, her reaction, I would argue, is rather childish.
I feel like that's where the next scene comes in. Where her reaction there is. I feel like at that point she had that moment and asked that question, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. But in this scene, her just instant reaction is defend my kids, defend my family, and yeah, it was childish but scary. Legitimate. I think.
I think she's gotten less and less relatable. I'm sorry. I think it's gone past where I can no longer enjoy the character. I enjoyed her pre-age up very much. I thought she was the strongest of the actors, and I really enjoyed the way it was nuanced, but it's no longer nuanced to any degree. Yeah, okay, yeah. She has a bit remorse afterwards, but not for the action, but for the repercussions. And she is now no longer a character that I would, want to, follow necessarily. She is basically Cersei, and I've already seen Cersei. I've already seen her arc. And she is Cersei because this is exact same things that she's been told from day one, that she needs to protect her kids and whatever. And I think they're just painting her up as Cersei number 2, and I don't like it. I don't necessarily. The only difference is that she's less promiscuous, I guess.
That's half the problem,
Right?
isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I
It
she
is.
needs a
Yes,
good
it is.
orgasm. We know we've discussed this.
the problem with her is that her means of protecting her kids by acting, and I use this word advisedly, hysterically, puts them at greater danger. And by continually demanding of Viserys that he takes action and trying to goad him into picking sides, has not worked yet, is not working. And I think that she just comes across, much like Cersei, as rather dumb and is still being used. She's still being used by Otto. And it's I mean, in one respect, it's pitiable, but I find her to be incredibly frustrating in her lack of any kind of tactical genius.
Yes, I literally, this is one of the things that took the episode from being very good for me to being okay, and that's because there's so many good scenes in here, and most of the things I have is nitpicky, but this is for me weak. That she's basically Cersei, and I don't necessarily need her.
Not necessarily saying the episode's bad, that's just saying that, I mean, I think they've achieved what they
Right.
want to achieve. in that characterization. So I think it's successful in its own
Exactly.
terms. Like I think you could argue there are things in Rings of Power that aren't successful in their own terms. They're badly executed. I think this is well executed for what they want to show.
But it's a
The
poor
fact that
choice.
you don't, the fact that you don't want another Cersei is more. It's a question of taste, which is totally your right. But I mean, I don't think it's a fault in writing. It's just that you're disagreeing with the path they're taking. Unless you feel that, is it that you don't like it because you find it repetitive, or is it that you
Yeah.
don't like it because you think the book was different? Because
No.
wasn't Fire and Blood also repetitive?
Yeah, I think that for me, Cersei isn't, and Alicent, as she's written in the book, she doesn't come off as specifically the same as Cersei. Yes, there's some similarities, but this reaction is very much close to that, and I don't necessarily think I hoped that we were watching something different than Game of Thrones 2.0 or 0.5 more rightly.
Well, I think it's kind of what they're trying to do is they're clearly trying to foreshadow, and I think it's what the project of Fire and Blood is exactly that, right? It's to show you how people who think that they are agents of their own will in the contemporary world of Game of Thrones are actually sort of entrapped by and unwitting victims of centuries-old dynamics. And that these are the dynamics that are being shown to then have echoes in the future. And the kind of the power dynamics, protecting your children, trying to fight their inheritance, I think is just the nature of dynastic claims and dynastic squabbles. And you can see that right now, right? You can see it right now in Harry and Meghan being pissed off their kids if they are or aren't princes and princesses and having his and her royal highness. You can see it in what's going on in your own country, Patrick, with the Queen effectively detitling her, set of grandchildren who aren't directly in the line of the throne. So this sort of like overprotective mother trying to protect her own kid's stake is, I think, very true to life. And I think it is repetitive because it is just the ever repetitive in real world and fantasy world nature of monarchy.
So I agree with the premise of in Fire Blood is to show that history repeats itself, but I don't agree that characters are carbon copies of each other. I think that the thing it shows is that some of the same motivations can lead to the same results, but sometimes there's also different motivations making history repeat itself. So I think that Alicent could have been very different and still ending up in the same problem would be even more interesting than her being a carbon copy of Cersei and that being the main crux of the story.
I would argue that they've taken some steps in Alicent's characterization to ensure that she's not just a Cersei copy. There are ways in which her personality exudes and the ways that she calculates and interacts with other people that just give me a fundamentally un-Cersei-like vibe.
I'd agree. And
It's actually one of my biggest worries going in is that they would just make it a Cersei 2.0. So I'm glad that they're at least trying to differentiate her in some degree.
And they do so in the very next scene, I think. So
yeah, Cersei would never have that level of introspection.
Right, exactly.
She would if she knew that she was about to get...
Sorry, guys.
Oh, I liked the Code of Harambe reference. Like, nice to see some Babylonian style justice arguments going down.
I don't understand what that's referring.
I was going to say
we're all idiots, Jock. Sorry,
we're not all as well read as you.
Well, it was mistranslated from the 1901 discovery of the Babylonian legal codes in Iran by the French, which is now in the Louvre, as an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Although it's been found that it doesn't translate to that, but like Addison was making the same sort of argument of sort of like equivalent exchange and like sort of mortal blows, and the various sort of quite interesting sort of Babylonian style legal arguments of similar levels where like there's tier hierarchies where like people of an equal class are treated like equally, so like the eye for eye, tooth for tooth thing, whereas like slaves would just simply get compensation, like the master would get compensation for like the murder and stuff. So I thought it was interesting, like people of the same class getting treated like the same in terms of like mortal blows, just like almost identical to the Code of Hammurabi.
Speaking on the Cersei 2.0 thing, as far as Cersei and Alicent's the societal expectations on them and how that resentment is coming out and manifesting is similar. I feel like that's where the similarities really end with them. You know, I'm expected to do this. This is what it is expected of me as a queen, as a noble woman, and I really hate that. But right then and there, I think that there's a difference. Alicent, at least not yet. I don't know what's going to happen, but at least not yet, is not treating her children like extensions of herself, like Cersei did, or at least not fully. She hadn't came full circle into that. I've really sat into that yet. So that to me is not really the same in that context. That she's not the same as Cersei in that context.
Quickly, just she basically been told from an early age that her kids are gonna die.
Right.
She does tell Aegon very early on that he needs to step up as a king, even though he doesn't want to. So she is already an extension of her will, or her his grandfather's will, actually. But that's different, or not. I mean, that's actually the same, really. So I think there's too many similarities. I don't think that all these similarities were as necessary. But yeah, that's the short version.
I think it just depends on how it works for you and how close you are. I think they're different enough, but whatever. We can disagree. It's cool. Oh, one of the things I liked most in this scene here is when Aemon is being questioned by Viserys. He's finally fed up and he's like, "Where did you hear this?" And he looks right at Alicent, and the look on her face like, "Oh shit, he's gonna call me out. Oh shit." And then he doesn't, but it's like it was just, that was a little moment I really liked, actually.
Some good facial acting
Right.
as eyes are darting around the room.
Right.
Fantastic acting. Like, he is the MVP of the episode, really. In terms of acting, I don't know where they got him,
Right.
but he got
Right.
chops.
He also had a lot to work with this episode, but still. To be fair.
Yeah. But as working in the school system, I can recognize, and sadly,
I know.
sadly though, I can recognize when a kid is trying to protect their parent, even though they
Right.
shouldn't, in a situation, and that's exactly the look that he showed there. And I don't know if he has good teachers, acting teachers, because I don't think they've necessarily shown him
Right.
similar
Right.
situations. So yeah, really good.
Another thing from this scene was Viserys. It was actually good to see Viserys finally like fed up and start to take some action, and he like jumps in and gets really definitive for once in his freaking entire like reign. But of course, in the end, he's still pretty feckless and ineffective and doesn't actually do anything. But he does, for at least for a minute there, stand up to her and stand up to everyone and be like, "No, you boy, give me the answer I'm asking you for." You know, he's really fed up with his own like impotence, you know, which actually was nice to see. But in the end, he still was pretty damn impotent, I think, you know.
When Aegon ultimately says, we all know, Father,
Right.
everyone knows they're strong, just look at him. He kind of looks
Right.
pathetic, taking out this whole investigator Viserys
Right.
for what's staring them in the faces.
Right.
It's a very good
There's nothing he
read
can
on
say
the
to it. Yeah.
recklessness of Viserys.
He's like, "Who's saying this?" He's like, "Everyone." And we all know it. There's really nothing that Viserys can say to that. You know, it was a great line. It was a great moment in the episode, I think. I think it's also interesting that Otto was the one to tell Alicent to stand down. But then later he's like, "Oh, that was impressive." Like, but he actually is the one who stands there like, "Okay, you've gone too far. Stop now." You know. I also like the line that Rhaenyra gives to Alicent right as she stabs her. It's like, "But now they see you as you are," which I thought that was a great line. That was probably as biting as the knife itself.
Yeah, I think that was actually the moment that I really started to feel bad for Alicent because, yeah, I mean, you can
Right.
obviously Alicent is brandishing a knife and is trying to stab you, but Rhaenyra is going to use this moment to sort of have a put down basically
Right.
and say, look at
Right.
me, look how good I look. I'm the wronged victim, and you just
Right.
did it for me.
It's like that moment was the turning point of the whole scene, right? Because like at this moment,
It's very much
she's been a little
framing
crazy.
Alicent as the
Right.
as
Aggressor.
in a more sympathetic light. From the viewer's perspective, I would argue. To everyone looking on, it looks like Alicent's crazy and is about to kill
Right.
Rhaenyra, of course.
Right.
And with Otto, it was very much a, calm yourself,
Right.
put yourself back together, and like, oh yeah, you did that. There you go, daughter. There you go. Very much like a parent who is, all right, break it up, break up the fight, and then whispers to their kid, you got them good. That kind of thing, like praising them for the violence that they're displaying, behind closed doors.
Right. It's like, not so loud, don't be so, calm down a little bit, but go girl.
Exactly.
Which we might as well move on to that scene at this point, because is there anything else to say about this scene until we move into Otto and Alicent and his "you go girl" moment? I liked his actual lines when I thought one of the most interesting things I thought in the whole episode was how remorseful Alicent was. Not so much for what she did, but like you said earlier, for the ramifications it's going to bring to their family and to her kids, and pretty much no one's going to take her side after this, or so she thinks. And she's really remorseful, and she says to her father, "I'm so sorry, I just fucked up everything we're doing." And then I loved Otto's lines too. "I've never seen that side of you. I even doubted its existence. We play an ugly game, and now for the first time, I see that you have the determination to win it." That was some great writing there, I thought.
I think it's the first
Win
time
what?
that Otto Hightower's actor Rhys Ifans smiles and shows some emotion. So yeah, that was also because supposedly he's a comedic actor. Like he's not known for playing the dour, serious types.
I think I saw him as a villain once, but yeah, in general, he's a fun guy. But the whole now you're ready to win it. Like there was a open answer win to the question, win what? And
The Game of Thrones.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's clearly what he's been playing all along, and he's been trying to groom her to play. And this is the moment he's been waiting for, right? Like he's been grooming her for this moment all along, even if ironically it blows up in her face and probably makes them look worse. He was just glad to see that fire in her. Like, yeah, I've been scaring you and getting you ready for this, and here you are. Like, you did it. Finally, you're on my side.
You gone full psycho. It's good.
I know, right? Except calm down a little bit, girl, but still.
Yeah. You need to be a calm psycho, not a irate psycho.
Like use that knife when no one's looking. Use a knife when no one's looking, not in front of the entire court, including your husband.
Yeah, that's bad form.
Yeah, but now that Otto's pretty much blessed it and co-signed it with, especially on top when she tries to talk to Viserys about it, like in the wheelhouse, in the carriage, and it's like, we need to talk about this. We really need to talk about what happened. And he's just like, I don't want to talk about it. Let's pretend it didn't happen. And to me, that's what closes the door for me on how now she's really starting to be, and her getting into it and being just as bad as Otto.
Right. And in many ways, that is Viserys in a nutshell. Yeah, there's problems. I don't want to deal with it. Let's just move on and pretend they're not happening. Who cares if the stepsons are getting taken or if my grandchild's having his eyes stabbed? We're just not going to think about it. And be nice to each other.
It's his
Oh,
son.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, you're right, sorry.
Areas like this aren't see territory. Like they're important for trade, but technically it wasn't his business.
You're saying the Stepstones wasn't his business, so you're actually defending him?
Yeah, I'll defend him on that.
Okay.
Like the Triarchy had much more of the stones than him.
Well, I don't know. Maybe. I think it's necessary to have like a buffer zone, and if anyone takes it, it's like a no man's land. I think that's the serenity of a country also is entailed by the country that's or the areas around it. And if you encroach too much on the territory around, then you're basically threatening the country's
Right. And not only
sovereignty.
that, but the pirates were attacking ships going to Westeros, rightfully. So,
Yeah.
But in any case, more to the point, I think it was just what my point really is just that he's been a very impotent king all around, and these scenes just show exactly more of it. You'd
It
hope
was
that
just
this,
disgusting how he was just like, we'll speak no more of it. It's like, dude, one of your kids lost an eye,
right?
treason, accusations all abound, and you're gonna say, let's not talk about it? I mean, even she was disgusted, really, and I think that was all the validation she needed to really
Right.
kind of go full steam on this.
Right. I mean,
Yeah, honestly,
let's face it.
I'm just saying.
All I was going to say is
David.
you can just see, like, in that last scene, how angry he was and how fed up with it was. And you've got to wonder if there wasn't a little moment in his head where he was like, this is all my fault. I've let them get away with this shit all along because I haven't put my foot down. So let me put my foot down. But, oh, wait, I'm not ready to really put it down yet. I'm going to, like, yell at this kid. Tell me who told you this. And, okay, never mind. I'm going to back off because I don't have the balls to actually go through with it because I'm not ready for the consequences of actually being a king, which is a problem.
Also, he's being a bad
That
husband.
too.
I mean,
Absolutely.
even if he disagrees with his wife, he should at least let her talk about her feelings in the carriage
Right.
and say that he understands her feelings and like try to mirror her feelings to some extent at least. Right now, he's alienating her even more, and that's gonna have
True.
consequences.
But-
Yeah. So he was never a good
But
husband.
to be fair,
He will never
she stood up to him and defied him in front of the entire court. I mean, his wife defied her king and husband in front of everyone. I mean, with a freaking knife. I mean, as much as he, might want to be the good husband and like kind of, make up a little bit here, but I mean, what she did was pretty damn awful. I mean, regardless of being a psycho and whatever, she stepped over lines that should have been dangerous and gotten her killed. For those lines she stepped over, she should be, if not in the dungeon, she should be dead, and that's not going to happen because he never does because he always lets people get away with shit. But, I mean, to be fair, he has a right to be angry at her at this moment.
Yeah, but he also makes himself out as being a reconciliator all the time, and he's definitely not doing that with his own wife. In any case, if he could have chosen to kill her or to sentence her to some sort of punishment, but he didn't. So now he has to live with that choice, which is that he's still married to her, and now they have to have that marriage to work, and she's not doing any of the work, heavy lifting for that part of it.
Which is right in character.
Also, I don't think
What, Jock?
I don't think she'd be of having a mental breakdown if it wasn't for Viserys being that lack of attentiveness to their relationship. So.
Fair point.
Yeah.
At the very least, holding her up in Maegor's Holdfast, like how she'll eventually, how it eventually happened to her, at the very end of everything. I mean, something.
Yeah, something.
Right.
Would have been good.
I mean, let's face it, I think at this moment, both of them, or at least particularly in the last scene with Alicent and somewhat here and him there, are both kind of taking a moment to go, these are the consequences for all the actions I've taken and haven't taken, and all the things that I've done and let pass. And they're both realizing, like, everything that we've seen for the last, 6 episodes is all coming to roost here, and this is their doing. I mean, if it weren't for all the stuff that happened in those episodes, that either of them did, none of this would have happened. So consequences suck.
Final thought. Don't you think that Alison might have respected him more if he had given her some sort of punishment,
Probably.
at least in the carriage, say you have to stay here
Right.
now, or you have to do something now because of this?
I think would at least
I
cooled
think
her
she would
off.
respect him.
May not have helped all the way, but at least
Yeah.
cooled her off. Yeah.
Maybe.
I think him just saying we'll no longer talk of this is, yeah, as you said, what really made her say, well, this is fine. I can do whatever I want because he's not going to do anything and he doesn't really care anymore. So, yeah.
Which is the worst
I'm
possible
just gonna-
thing reaction he should have had. Like, that was his out right there.
Which
That
is
was his
Viserys
Yeah.
in a nutshell.
Yeah.
When doesn't Viserys do the worst possible thing he could have done? And the most passive one. That's who he is, which is great for a character development, but not development, but like he's in his character.
Yeah. Advice to any husbands out there: engage in your relationship with your wife. Don't phone it out. Phone it in. Just engage in your relationship. That's a good advice.
Okay, well I think we've milked this stuff as much as we can with Alicent. Let's move on to actually not quite with Alicent. We have one more big scene with Alicent. First of all, Rhaenyra and Laenor having their little, okay, what does this mean for us moment, and him deciding, oh shit, I've been like sitting on the sidelines and now my kids are getting into this. And that whole scene between them where he says that he, is going to, where he's going to get, where he's going to get more engaged in this marriage and the children and their future, and how he commits to her more. And I particularly thought it was interesting, his whole scene with him dealing with, the consequences of his homosexuality, where he says, I hate the gods for making me as they did. I particularly liked Rhaenyra's reaction to that, where she said, I do not. You're an honorable man with a good heart. It's a rare thing. I like.
Yeah, this was an interesting reaction from Rhaenyra. Like,
Right.
you could have very easily written it the other way, where she's just bitter and angry and she has nothing but scorn. And I'm glad
Right.
they didn't take that option, because it makes what comes after that much more
Right.
nuanced.
Right. Particularly when you consider that it's not like she was like blindsided by this. She knew exactly what she was getting into. They had a plan, and that plan didn't work out so well. But, she went into this knowing exactly what she was doing, and, she has a point. He is a good man, and that's nice,
Do you think that Laenor's commitment to this marriage is coming, 15 years too late?
Oh,
I mean, it's a
absolutely.
commendable effort, but
Absolutely.
yeah, it does come across as a little bit pathetic. Like, cow has been milked and there's no squirting the milk back up the udder, as they
Well,
say.
you could argue the other way around. The cow hasn't been milked, and that's part of the problem. I mean, if they really were going to commit to this relationship, they should have found a way to actually have a kid, like, I don't know, a 3-way or whatever you got to do to make this happen, because that would have been what they should have done, but they didn't. So
The old Renly Baratheon move method.
right.
You can edit this out, but maybe he's not a bottom, so maybe it wouldn't work.
True. Maybe not.
I hope someone asks his actor that question. That's a very important detail I need to know.
There you go.
Yes. Needs immersion of this character. Am I a bottom?
Now we're getting Vok here. Should that be the name of the episode? I bottom.
Am I a bottom?
I think it's more of a now with more incest. In any case, anything else about this scene? Do you think he was sincere, that he was really going to commit to this relationship and to their wedding and their future? Seemed it. What do you?
It does seem sincere.
I think he would have.
Yeah.
But I think you can have the will
Right.
to try to do good in the relationship and still
Right.
fail. And I think he would have ended up, going back to his own ways. Because if you're bored for 10
Right.
years, you will end up finding some way to not be bored. That's just how it is.
Seems cognizant of the fact that this is going to make him miserable, even if it's
Right.
the quote-unquote right thing to do.
Yeah. It's not what I want, but I've got booze for that.
And she's like, well, taking the later scenes into account, she's like, "Oh, honey, we know that's not going to
Right.
happen. Yeah, we need to find a solution for you because you need something
Well,
else."
we're getting there.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we're not going to quite get there yet, but there's one other little scene here that I actually really liked, which is the scene with Lara Strong and Alicent on the boat, where he comes to her and is like, "Well, I'm here for you." I really like that scene. And do you think that he's just in the Game of Thrones? Is he really just trying to get power, or do you think he loves her? We had that question last week, and I think now it comes up even stronger in this scene. What do you think? I mean, she doesn't love him, but
The vibe he gives off is just so weird
Right.
and like weirdly devoted
Creepy.
that it makes me think that it's not love. It's something else.
Is it just power?
Fatal
Is it just
attraction.
power, or is it some weird? He's a weird guy with a weird obsession.
I think he enjoys her company and that he enjoys the friendship that he gets from her, even if she seems to be kind of creeped out and disgusted at times.
Which you can't blame her for.
Platonic. I'm going to put it in the platonic category.
Fair enough.
I feel like the actor's playing the supervillain. Like I think like he's eventually going to try and defeat Superman.
Fair point. So this is mostly
In
tactical.
I
his,
think. Yeah.
it-
But no, I think maybe he's also, if we go by what her character's about, which is being, what do we call it, pious and true to what all the expectations of her is. She's supposed to be sort of like a paragon of the Westerosi ideals. I think he enjoys seeing her fall and helping her, maybe also. Like, there's a sort of fascination with helping her, and like, you are the most pure thing, like a rose, like a flower. He's like trying to, sort of protect, but also by interacting with her, he's sort of corrupting her as well. It's a weird dynamic. I don't like the character, but I like the dynamic.
I mean, he definitely has this whole like, "Oh, it's okay. I don't mind. If you want me to murder people for you, I'm totally cool with that." And if I happen to corrupt you a little in the process, that's even better.
I think he's enjoying the whole corruption thing.
Right. Yo, definitely.
Very much so.
But maybe he's helping her not to be soiled herself. Like, he's trying to keep her pure in a way. Maybe it's a different way. Maybe she's trying to, keep her hands clean by doing everything for her.
Yeah.
I
He
don't know.
does seem a little disappointed when she's not like, "Yeah, go kill people for me." But
He's the minion that enjoys getting his hands dirty. Really.
right. So speaking of getting the hands dirty, let's move into the next couple of scenes with Damon, Rhaenyra, Khal, and Laenor. We got a little scheming here where Rhaenyra goes to Damon, and she definitely like is we were talking earlier about who's initiating. She definitely is initiating here. She's like, "Okay, I need you. Not only do I want you, whether how much she does or not, we can discuss and debate, but I definitely need you politically after the shit that just went down. So let's do this." And then, of course, Damon comes up with except there's this little problem of your husband, which is a fair point, and then all that happens afterwards. So let's start with this part, and we'll move on because there's a lot to discuss here, especially with how it's different from the books.
Enjoyed the initial setup between Rhaenyra and Damon discussing the differences between fire, water, what fire does to you, what water
Right.
represents, and how
Uh-huh.
they represent the different embodiments of each house. It was fun. Nice wordplay.
Hmm.
Foreshadowing,
Right.
actually, because she talked about escape, offers you escape ward. So she's basically spelling out the plan before.
Or
Yeah,
stating
I
it
like that.
outright, which is always appreciated dialogue.
Were you guys fooled? Did you think that it was just going to go as it seemed like it was going to go, where Damon was going to go to Khal and have him kill Laenor, which is what presumably happens in the books?
Yeah, apparently I'm stupid because
I
thought
totally was expecting it. I was totally blown away that it didn't happen. I was shocked.
that. Yeah.
Frankly, disappointed personally.
Okay.
Also a little.
I was
I would
not.
have liked it
I
just
was
as
definitely
well.
not.
I think the primary reason that that twist happened was so that they could avoid the what you would call bury your gaze trope taking
Exactly.
place.
Exactly.
I-
Yeah.
And it really was the opposite because, I mean, let's face it, these two guys are now going to go off and probably have the only happy ending of the entire fucking story.
Oh, they will.
I mean, 'cause almost no one else is going to survive this, but they're gonna presumably, and they're going to go off and be happy. So, I mean, I know some people are upset. I saw a few reactions online where people were upset that they shunted off the gays and that they had to leave because they were gay, and that's a fair assessment. And I think I know some people were upset last week with the week before with the bury your gays trope and whatever, and it's a fair assessment. But it's kind of nice that they let them have a happy ending differently from the books, which I liked.
Beats the alternative and the criticism that they would
Right.
receive if
And
they
rightful.
played it straight. I think they were just very cognizant of that.
Well, I know one of the writers mentioned there was interviews of it, and they mentioned the bury your gays thing, and he basically blew it off like, yeah, well, whatever. Yeah, that's not what we're dealing with. So I'm not so sure they were cognizant of it, but it felt like they were.
They know
felt like it
exactly
was.
what they're doing.
Right. It
And
really
when he
felt
says,
it.
"Oh, I don't know that," he's talking shit.
Right. Yeah,
Do
I
you
feel like
guys
you're right.
think that Rhaenys and Corlys know and are in on it in some kind of a way, or are they just going to be suffering because all their kids are dead?
Rhaenys's
Ladder.
tears
Ladder.
looked-
Ladder.
Yeah, they looked genuine, and that actually was the most heart-wrenching part of the episode, is seeing
Yeah.
her second child die, and I felt super bad for her.
Right. So here's another question for you guys. And were you duped when they did escape, right? When we saw them escape, did you realize that Rhaenyra and Daemon were in on that? Or did you like totally think that these two just said, that Daemon went to him and said, like, look, kill him, and he said, sure, yeah, I'll take your money and kill him, and then didn't kill him, and the two of them, as it was going on, as I was watching it, I felt like the two of them just said, yeah, well, fuck that, we're gonna get away with it. We're gonna run away now. I didn't get that they were intending that Rhaenyra and Daemon, like, that was their plan all along.
Well, there was a red
Right.
herring in there because it seemed like Damon gave Khal
Right.
money.
Oh no, he did.
Which, yeah, but he could have given Laenor the
Right.
money, and then he could have given a bigger purse. I think it was a bit of a red herring they put in there to just make us, doubt it. But reflecting on the things that they said in that monologue while the plan
Right.
was hatching, like Ocean's 11
Right.
style, I think it's obvious that they were in on it.
Yep.
It's just that
Not
they
in on it,
tried
but
to
they
throw
hatched
in a
it. That was their plan.
yeah, that was their plan
And I
all
like
along.
that a lot. Like at the moment, I was just excited that they got away and that they were going to have a happy life. And then to realize that, like, Rhaenyra, particularly, and somewhat Daemon, that this was their plan all along, I thought that was awesome.
The sea means
Right.
escape.
And there are places you can go where
Yeah.
all you need is money. You don't need a name.
And as disappointing as I kind
No.
of was with that, I suppose it had to happen that way. It's not like he could him abandoning Sea Smoke, but it just can't take a dragon with you, obviously. So that's how kind of it was supposed to happen, or how it should have happened.
Yeah. So this leads to a couple of interesting questions I had for the group, which is one, This is clearly a change from the books, because in the books there's no indication whatsoever that he survives. And, there's different questions of who's responsible. Was it Damon? Was it the king? Was it Rhaenyra? Who knows? We don't know. Or was it what we are led to believe is that it was a lover's quarrel because Laenor was looking at other men. But this is definitely a change, although we didn't know exactly what happened, but definitely him surviving is a change because there's no indication whatsoever that happened. Is that a good thing? Sometimes people hate when there are any changes at all. In this case, for me, this was a change that absolutely worked. What do you guys think?
I hate all change.
It's fine.
So, no,
You can if
it's
you want.
fine. No, I think I would have liked both ways. I think it's like having alternate tellings of what happened. Is you can choose to, in this case, it's sort of spelled out what's happened now. But for me, both scenarios would have worked just as well for me, and I don't care that much that it's different. It is just what it is. It's different, and it's actually
Okay.
fine.
How about the rest of you guys?
For once.
What about the rest of you? What do you think?
I think just acknowledging the show as its own separate canon and continuity that's going to have differences from the books sort of puts you in a good mindset that it'll be what it is.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the writing's good, that's all you can ask for.
In my opinion, using adaptations just to reproduce a lesser copy of the same text is, I think, a waste. I think you should adapt to the medium and create a new story with the same sort of not the exact same characters, but your own sort of world, and use the collective production that occurs in film and television to create new harmonies between interpretations of the characters, and those new interpretations creating a new story that works alongside the production rather than just a copy of a text. I think that's just setting yourself up for failure if you try and just copy a text exactly.
Yeah, and it's as long as it's it doesn't go against the spirit of the story, because this didn't really change anything. Yes, there's one thing that it does.
It is a minor
it sets a
moment.
question that this. Yeah, they said no, it's not. It's actually quite pivotal for the progression of the story that Damon and Rhaenyra is together now. But
the survival is minor.
But yeah, but the survival is minor, and the only thing that we end up with, we sit back with that we didn't do before, is that we know that Rhaenyra and Damon knows that Laenor is alive, and they're not telling the parents that he is alive. That's the only difference that we now know, and it's minor. I think it's a minor thing.
I think if anything, I feel like this makes both Rhaenyra and Damon more likable, and it gives it just makes them seem more. I mean, I like this version of the story for them as characters, and I also liked the moment where he says they're gonna know we did this, and she's basically good. Let them fear us. That was actually some really interesting character stuff there, because it's a valid point. Let's be honest. Him being killed moments after all of this happened probably seems a little not very coincidental, So there's got to, that everyone's going to be whispering that they did this. And the idea of, fine, let them fear us. Because if you're going to be a queen, you got to be feared, I really like that.
There's some interesting moralities with, not telling these grieving parents, the innocent man who had to have his neck broken so that he could get charred. The whole thing it's an interesting scenario that they've just engineered.
Right. Which also leads to another question I was going to ask here, which is, so there's lots of things, because of the way the story is told in the books, we don't know a lot of what happens. We only get, well, Mushroom said this, and Maester whatever said this, and this witness thinks that. And this is particularly one of those cases where we don't really know what happens at all. And clearly, obviously, on the show, we're giving a pretty definitive, this is what happened. And there have been a bunch of those moments that we've seen in the last few episodes. Are we liking that, or are we kind of disappointed that we're getting those answers that we didn't quite get from the books?
I would be watching this if we weren't watching for the definitive answers sometimes. I mean,
I was
I mean, some
actually
people are going
kind
to
of
be angry.
annoyed reading Fire and Blood and the World of Ice and Fire having these ambiguities, because I know that George wanted it to be historical, like where there are things we don't know, but he also has outright stated in interviews that when he got to a difficult situation and he didn't know how to resolve it, he would just take this option of, I don't have to answer it, I'll just go with these three ideas and let
point.
people think this up and come up with their own solutions. And that's always annoyed me to some extent. So it's fun just seeing definitive version of this universe coming out.
Yep, I agree. What about the rest of you? Are you happy to get these answers, or are you mad that they're giving us definitive answers you didn't want?
I like it. I'm enjoying the whole fill in those spaces process. I mean, I'm the same. I wouldn't be watching it. Well, I would still be watching it, but
Of course you would. Of course you would. We all would. Yeah.
I
Okay.
enjoy it. I enjoy that they're doing it like that. Yeah, I'm having a good time.
And then that leads to the next question, which is, do you think that these definitive answers are coming from George? We know he's more involved in this show than he is in others, but that just because we saw in this episode that Lenore survives and that Khal didn't kill him and that Damon and Rhaenyra paid them off and told them to go away and this was their plan, do you think that is George's intention? Do you think that came from George, or do you think the writers are changing some stuff?
I'd
I
be
would say the
surprised if that was
writers.
George.
Yeah, probably almost certainly not coming from George, and that the writers are probably just sitting down with each of these ambiguities and talking it out. What is the most interesting outcome for these characters? If it went this way, what does that mean? If it went this way, what if we merged it a little bit, as they've done with some of the previous ones? And they're just writing it from a what makes the best story aspect.
totally agree. I think that this is a scene that has been thought out by multiple minds, not a one single. Even such as a great one as George R. R. Martin's. It is well written and well thought out. There is foreshadowing. There's everything in it. It is a good scene. No matter how much you like the outcome or not, it's a good scene, and it shows that there are great writers behind this.
Personally, I'm going to be contrary here because I feel like, but then again, I also thought about this about the last couple of seasons of Game of Thrones. I feel like that George is an executive producer on that, and he's pretty involved in talking to them about what's going on. I feel like where there's ambiguities, I think sometimes they're going to do what they're going to want to do, but I feel like they probably said, so what did you intend here, George? And he just told them, and then they either went with it or they maybe changed their mind once in a while or whatever. But I feel like this is straight from George, and it feels like it's straight from George. So maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, and I would say that I think there are cases where George himself doesn't actually know what the answer is, and he hasn't
That's probably true.
gotten there himself.
That's a fair point, too. I mean, we'll never know on each case unless George. It would be interesting if George at some point came out and go, "Yeah, that was my idea," or or if one of the other writers went, "No, George didn't tell us, so I came up with this idea." But then again, when Dan and Dave did that with the last few seasons of Game of Thrones, people got really, really mad that they spoiled things that are going to happen in the books. Although I guess in this case the story's already told, so I guess there isn't much to spoil other than what really happened. Which. It's not like George is going to tell the story again. He's already done 2 short stories, 1 history book, and then a second one. And so probably we won't be getting any more of this, but in any case. Other than the big book coming out soon with now more pictures. With the same text and more pictures.
I like more pictures.
I do too, but it feels so much like a cash grab right now, especially with no other books coming.
Yes, the winter is bitter. It's going to
It's
be
gonna
bitter
be
winter.
bitter winds coming to bite us. So we have one last real scene at the end here after the shocking non-death. Valerian wedding. So that, first of all, my first thought was, damn, that's fast. Like, okay, so first of all, Damon's wife just died, and now conveniently her wife dies, and hey, let's get married. No, we didn't plan this at all. Like, seems a little dubious, right? I mean, admittedly, they did it in private, but still, it seems like. I mean, again, there was where she said, "Let them think it, let them fear me," But it seems a little too. They should have waited a month, Maybe they did. We don't even know because we don't know how time's running. But
You
what do
can
you think?
argue that there's an ambiguous time break that may or
Right.
may not be there. This occurs after the king has left and after the
Right.
Green Party has departed.
Right.
At least they didn't shoot themselves in the foot and say, "Oh my God, it's only been 24 hours."
Right.
Snow bloody
Yeah.
nose.
Oh, that would be good. And but how much did we love being book fans? How much did we love the Valerian wedding there and how they went into it? That was really good. I liked how it worked.
It's great.
It was different.
Bloody
Yeah, it was very
pagan
different, and it's good.
ritual.
Yeah, I think it was a contrast to the whole funeral scene in the beginning, and you had like this connection to the sea, and it was very sterile because we never got to see the corpse or whatever was
Right.
left of it. And here we have like blood, and they have fire on their dresses or dressings, and it's like very much a contrasted sort of ritual practice they have here in this. Yeah,
And it make for
I
a
liked
nice
it.
bookend of the episode to start with the funeral and end with the wedding and and kind of let them glory in the victory they just had,
Passionately making out as their poor stepchildren look on with disgusted faces.
Right. Right.
Poor children. So much in 24 hours.
I know, right?
Yeah, but to be fair, I think they'll get the Damon's kids would get a better dealing with actually having people who care about them other than just Damon being a distant father. So I think they will have a better situation for a little while at least, with being in a family that's also sort of mourning, and they could mourn together to a certain extent.
And we got to get some dragons for the upcoming war. I don't know. I mean, I feel like this episode leaves us in a place where at the end you're like, wow, a whole shitload changed here, right?
It was a very pivotal episode in terms of the dynamics that changed. When you consider that the Greens getting Vagar entirely makes the war for succession possible, where beforehand it was essentially, it was gonna just be a walkover for the Blacks.
I'm still upset. He doesn't deserve Vagar.
Vagar's too good for him.
Girl, you too
Nope.
good for him.
But we knew it was.
No, she doesn't.
But she doesn't think so, because those girls always like the bad boys.
Vagar wanted a rebound real quick.
She was in a very vulnerable position. She just, lost someone. I think he took advantage of that.
And she went for the bad boy. The new one-eyed bad boy, but not at the time. And if anything, I think the scene of the ships going off with the dragons flying overhead kind of heightened the idea that, wow, things have changed here. In any case, is there anything anyone else has to say about this episode? We've certainly covered a lot, as I knew we would, because a lot freaking happened in this episode.
One last
right?
nitpick. Sorry.
Stay on
Yes.
brand. Stay on brand.
One thing that was different
It's
is
cool.
that they're already talking about the Greens. They actually mention it
Mhm. Yep.
in Valerian.
Yep. First mention.
Or High Valerian. They talked about it. And there's been no actual scene with a green and a black dress yet. So that leads me to think that they might not even have that scene in the series, in the show, which worries me.
Well, it was weird because it was the first ever mention of the greens in the show, and we did have it pointed out in that scene
I
at
take
the
heart
wedding.
from
So
the
see.
title of episode 10, which is called The Black Queen. It makes me think we might see a nice little black dress on Rhaenyra.
Okay.
Nice little black number.
Strapless little black dress. That's a song from Shock Treatment, which is the sequel to Rocky
I haven't
Horror.
watched that one. I need to.
Sorry,
I didn't know there was a sequel. Okay.
it's not great. It's not great.
I love.
It's not great at all.
Rocky Horror.
In fact, they recast a whole several. I used to be in Rocky Horror. I used to be Brad in Cambridge, Massachusetts. But we're talking decades ago. But yeah, no. But it's not very good. And they recast a bunch of people, including both Brad and Janet, and obviously Frank's not in it because he's dead. Spoiler. But it's not very good. But if you want to see it, it's out there.
Send me the title so I can watch it. I will watch it faithfully because I love that show.
I could tell you. So we should probably mention it so listeners can hear it. It's called Shock Treatment.
Okay.
There was actually a sequel that he either wrote or was gonna write, that Richard O'Brien was gonna write, but it never happened as far as I know. So I think there's like a version of like a summary of what he was planning out there on the internet somewhere. I believe I've read sometime in the last couple of decades, but Shock Treatment is the official sequel, and it was made like 25 years ago. So it's out on Blu-ray. I have no idea where it's streaming, but
I will find it.
Really not very good. I only knew about it because when I was in the show, we used to have a pre-show where we would do a couple of scenes from the movie and then also a couple of other songs that we would just act out before, and we used a couple of songs from Shock Treatment, including Little Black Dress and the theme song Shock Treatment. But in any case, we're off topic. Shocking. We never do that with Vok, right? Is there anything else anyone has to say about this episode? It seems like we generally liked it, so that's good.
Yeah, overall, a really solid one. Like everyone else, it moved things along. I did not think that any jumps were bad. I think they did a really excellent job at more characterization of everyone. I'm excited for next week for sure.
Supposedly, we are getting one more time jump next episode. It's not clear if it's before or after the next episode, but there is one more, and that might be the last big time jump of the whole series, because they've already said in some of the interviews that they're probably not doing them next year. So next season. So we had to get through all the prequel stuff, and now the war is going to break out, presumably soon.
Lots of people felt, and I think this were maybe non-book people, just speaking of time jumps, did not really appreciate the time jumps and how it kind of fell within the story. A lot of people were complaining that it was very jarring for them and kind of knocked off the characters and the momentum of us getting to know the characters. And really felt like episode 1 could have started right when the children are already of age and getting into the war.
I get it, and it probably is true, and I know Hannah said the same thing over when she last was on. But I do think that the background gave us all the character motivations we need, and gave us. I think we needed that background, and I would have really not liked to have had the first episode be, yes, do you remember when this happened? I like that we got the background.
Also, I wouldn't have had a chance to like Allison.
There you go. All of us. Okay, well, I think that's probably going to wrap it up. Is it time for an Aru?
Yep.
3, 2, 1, Aru!
Aru!
So thank you all for listening, and thank you all for joining me. We are the WolfCast, Vassals of Kingsgrave. You can find us on all the socials, and you can also find us on vokpodcast.com, I believe. And there should be links wherever you find this to find us. Join us on the Discord. And as I said earlier, if you would love to talk to us, you can talk to us on the Discord. If you'd like to join us in a podcast, just if you feel like talking smart with us and talking nerdy, join us. That's what we're here for. Every one of us came the same way. We listened, we enjoyed, and we joined in. And that's who we are. So thank you all. Come back and see us. There will be another Dragon Cast this week, I believe still. And then next week we'll all be back. Or hopefully some of us, or most of us. Okay. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, David. Thanks for everything.
Thanks,
Guys.
Bye, guys.
Hey Vassals, if any of you are in Phoenix or Scottsdale, Arizona and are not a serial killer and would love to have a little mini moot with me, Bina 007, and join the Discord and hit me up in the DMs. Thank you.